everybody, it is PokeUp1234 here, and welcome to a tutorial as to how I make very realistic fire trucks out of parts in Roblox. Now, a lot of people would normally go to meshes. It's a lot easier to do, but it just takes a lot of time to upload and all that. But I like to work with parts. I think that they can come out really nicely. Now, I do have a hard time with like curved parts, especially on the front here. I usually save the windshield for last because that can be a little bit of a hassle. But otherwise, the entire back is very easy because most fire trucks have a more squared off design. Now, I do get a lot of questions about the chassis of the truck, as in like what GUI it uses in the driving system. I can't exactly help you with that because there's so many different chassis and so many different options out there, and I'm not very confident with every single one of them. So that is up to you to figure out, and there's a lot of people out there that are very confident with certain ones, so if you talk to the right people, you can get a lot of help with that for your chassis. Right now I'm going from the Renegade chassis from Fire Simulator to an A chassis, so the truck actually has suspension and will drive more realistically, but that also requires me to make a new light and siren GUI with it to go with the driving chassis. So it's a lot of work, but if you can figure out how the GUI works, then you should be able to figure out how to lay out the truck. But right now this is more of just a building tutorial as to how you can actually make the 3D model for this in Roblox. Now here's what we're going to do. We're going to start simple. Alright, so first you want to get yourself a template. You can easily find this on Google. Just search Firetruck blueprints, or you can put the specific model that you're looking for. Just be careful because sometimes it's very difficult to find certain models. Like I could not find a template for a Peyruis contender for a specific year. So that's something that you have to be a little careful about. So anyway, in this video, we're going to be making a Peyruis Aero XT cab for the fire truck. I'm not worried about anything back here. We're just focusing on the cab for this tutorial. And I'm actually going to make it for the San Diego Fire Department color version of it. So that's going to be very interesting, and I'm going to try and go over as much as I can about like how everything is actually placed together. Okay, so let's get started. So first, what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to get a part. I just duplicated this little template, and then I'm going to remove the texture that's on the front of it, and then change it to part, so that way I have a starting point. Name is here, so then we're going to change it to capital P-A-R-T. There we go. And here is our starting part. Now, what I want to do is I want to take this and I want to line it up with whatever I want to place it as. So here I want to put it on the template texture, whatever. And then I'm going to size it down to what I need. Now, I'm probably going to get some questions about this, so if you're wondering what measurement I'm using, so what scale I'm using it, 0.05 because it's like 0.1, but it's a little bit more precise because it's half of that, so I can actually move a little bit more carefully without being with 0.01, because that one it's like extremely precise and it's very easy to have holes and gaps in your truck. So if you want a nice even truck, that's why I use 0.05. So first I'm going to start out with a solid block for where the door is going to be. I'm not worried about the angles or the parts that I have to take out of it, because I'm going to go over how to do that next. So here's the front door, and this will have a bend here. We'll have to take out a corner of this, and then we'll also have to take out this part here. We're going to have to take out a little circle of this. Now, how do we do that? A lot of people don't know how to do this. It's very easy, but sometimes it can get a little bit confusing. So I'm going to make this red, I don't know if I want to worry about the striping right now, because normally I make that out of parts, but I can do that later. So let me make sure that this is actually lined up where I need it to be, and it appears to be so. So this is what we're making. Right here is what we're looking at. We're going to make a San Diego fire rescue engine, and then I'm going to be able to take this, do some modifications, and then make the rescue truck, which is what I'm hoping to do. And I'm only worried about the cab, once again, not the back. So we have to notice some things about this picture here, is that here we have this line, which we have on the template, and then we have to figure out, is the circle cutout on the door, is it connected to the rim here, or is there a slight little gap between the two? And it appears that there is a slight little gap, which is also present on our template. So we're going to have to take account of that if we want this to be as realistic as possible. So first I want to start with the cutout on the top, because that's the easier one to do. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this and I'm going to move it off. Also, I'm going to change it to smooth plastic because that will look a lot better. You can use metal as well. Metal looks pretty good, but otherwise you use something like smooth plastic or anything like that. It doesn't really look nice for the body of the cab. So here we have this cutout, which we want to recreate. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a wedge piece and then I'm going to put it all the way down in here. So basically the wedge is going to fit here, here, and here. So what I'm going to do here is to make sure that we don't have any gaps whenever I move the wedge, because these two parts are different sizes, and I have them on different, to avoid any gaps, because these two parts are different sizes. Then not only that, when I spawned it was in a completely different place. So here what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the wedge, put it to the center of this part by using the position on the properties tab, and then I'm going to size it to be the exact same thing. So I'm going to copy this and then paste it into the wedge. And there it is. Sometimes you might have to change some measurements depending on the wedge and which way it's facing, or the part as well. So you might have to fidget around with this sometimes, and we're probably going to see that sometime as we move forward in building this truck. So now we have the wedge here. You can see it on this side, but you can't see it on this side. That's okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the red, and then I'm going to hit Control on my keyboard, so that way I can pull it both sides equally. Now you see that the wedge is centered on this block, and that's what we're looking for. So whenever you want to size it bigger than what it is here, and you want to center it on this part, then you just use the Control key. But I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back to here because I want to take this and I want to determine the size of the wedge. I'm going to determine the size of the wedge that I need in order to make this. Alright, and looking at the reference again, the wedge actually goes from the top of the door all the way down to what meets the hinge. So I'm going to move this into place. And we're already lined up. We should be already lined up at the top. Okay, so it appears that we're not. Okay. So now that I have the wedge on the door, I'm going to size it to where it needs to go. And I have to be very careful with where I'm placing the block. That this goes and lines up perfectly. So we can actually use this line here on the template. This is a pretty good template because it gives us the line which we want to put this wedge down. And I think that would be good. Then I'm going to push it in, and I think that might be it. And I also noticed something here is that the door, I think I oversized it on the top. Yes, I did. Okay. Now I'm going to fix this door. So now it's going to be at the size that we want it. So you're probably wondering, I have a part that I want to use for the door, and I have the wedge for the cutout. Oh, I think it was accidentally sized. Oops. Okay, I'm gonna restart. This is one of the things that you have to be careful about, is that when you're sizing it, you can't size it improperly. You can't hold down the wrong key or you mess up the entire block. So now I have to restart this door because it was sized improperly. I think I hit shift and then size it like that. And as you see here, it makes weird decimal point positions and sizes on the block, which we don't want. So I'm going to set it back. So here we have the block again. Here's what Roblox development is all about, trial and error. If it doesn't work, just redo it. We'll take this door apart, take it off real quick. And now the wedge is lined up with where we want it to be. So all I have to do is just resize this part and then this part. So over until we meet the line, and then up so that we meet this line. So then I'm here, and then we can go a little bit more over so that we're following that slope. Now, you're probably wondering, we have a part and a wedge. How do I cut out a corner from the part? Now, most people would just take the wedge and then put a part underneath here and a part over here to fill in the frame. I don't want to do that. I can make this out of one single part. So a lot of people probably don't know how to do this, but unioning and negating parts is very effective in making these trucks. And you're definitely going to need it once you get to the windshield. That's one of the most difficult parts, and it really gets annoying with the unions. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to rotate it. And I'm going to put it into its place of where the cutout would be. Now you can see that the part is actually slanted on this corner, but it's still there. So in order to make it disappear, I would have to negate this, select the part as well, and then hit the union button. But watch what happens. Now you see here, because it wasn't sized over what I'm trying to negate from, and it was sized the same, you're most likely going to run into something like this. Or you'll see here, there will be a weird line that will stick out. And from one angle, you can't exactly see it very well, but you can definitely see it from this side. We don't want this. So in order to prevent this, also do not try to resize negative parts without turning them into parts and then back to negative parts. Otherwise, you'll get weird measurements on your part size. So I want to make this wedge bigger while keeping the same slope, because if I do this, it's not the same. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to double all the measurements except for this. I'm not worried about this because this can stay the way that it is. But as for the other two measurements this way and this way, I want to keep the same measurement. Or I want to keep the same slope. So here's what we're going to do is that I'm going to hit my calculator hotkey. So now I have my calculator up, and I'm also going to anchor these parts. For some GUIs and some chassis you can't anchor them, but for mine, the one that I'm using, I can. Okay, so we're good here. Now the measurement is... So we're going to figure out what this one is. I can just do that by resizing it, and I see which number changes. So we need to multiply the 2.7 and the 0.45, double. So we get 0.9. Now we have one side, but as you can see, the slope is not the same that it was before. So we need to do the other side, so that way we get it to the same thing that it was before. And then this one is going to be 5.4 for the 2.7 measurement. Now it's the exact same slope as that smaller wedge that we just had in here. And also see that it sticks off the sides, so we're guaranteed to not get that weird line that happened last time I negated it. And I just moved it again, undo. And there it is. This is cut out, just the way that we need it. So now we have half of that done. Then I'm going to separate it again so I can do two cutouts at the exact same time. But we have this one and we know that it works. So here's what I'm going to do. We need a cylinder to be able to cover this outer side here. So first I want to make the rim, because the rim is very important. So I'm just going to do is make the circle size that I need and then extend it just a little bit for the rim. Now we can actually do this, is we don't need to go up here and pick out a cylinder and then size it and then position it and size it properly. We can take this part, duplicate it, and come down here because there's a shape option. You cannot do this with wedges, but you can do it with balls and cylinders from blocks. You can also take the cylinders and make them blocks. And there we go. So now we have a cylinder, which is going to be where our rim is going to go. So first we have to get it to the top here, and so we want to size it properly. So I'm going to bring this down so that this line touches the line of the top of the rim. Then I'm going to extend it using control. Now as you can see, the circle's not moving, because it only moves if this top part is bigger, because it doesn't move unless it's a square. So these guys can stick out as much as they want, but the cylinder is always a square in size. So in order to fix this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag down and then back out again. And as you can see here, we're starting to cover more of this gray area, which is what we're looking for. This is the radius that I want. This is the width that I want this circle to be in. So then I'm going to drag it down again. And now, once I see it start to go down like this, that's not what I want. So I want to go back up until it's at its maximum size. Then this is the size that the rim is going to be here. So we're going to make this gray. And that's where that's going to be. This is a placeholder for now, but we're going to need this later, so don't worry. So now I want to get a little bit bigger of a circle, but I can go a lot wider. So I should get something like that. You can see that this part is actually bigger than the rim, which is what we want. And then this is going to be what we're going to negate. So once I line it up with the door, as you can see here, it's glitching through. That means that it's on the exact same axis here. And these parts are in the same, basically the same spot. They're literally on top of each other. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use control. And then I'm going to take the cylinder and I'm going to negate it from the door. But remember that we also have the second door in the back. So I'm going to need this again. So rather than have to make a new one, which if we make a new one, we might mess up the size and it might not be the same. So rather than make a new one, I'm going to duplicate it. So that way we have an extra that we can use. And as you can see here, once I move this, we have the exact cutout that we need for the door, and it's all made out of one part. Just this one red part. So we took one red part, did some cutouts, and boom, now we have the door shape. Right now I'm not worried too much about the glass. That's easy. And we're going to do the exact same thing that we did with the door, but instead we're going to do it with a block where we're going to put the glass. And we also have to remember that the glass itself on the door has to be cut out as well, otherwise it will glitch through the windshield, which we don't want. So there's one door done, and then I think now we should move on to the second. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this, and to make sure we get the same, just to make sure that we avoid getting any holes or anything that you can see through the cab. We don't want any gaps. I'm going to separate it, and then I'm going to get rid of this. Now, because we separated it, we actually have this cylinder cut out right where we need it. So I don't really need the spare anymore. So just remember that if you use the same cutout, and it's in the same spot here, so that's exactly where it needs to be. But remember that if you ever lose this, so let's say I accidentally deleted this and I really needed it for this door. I already had one on this door, so I don't have to worry and make a new one or flip out, okay? Everything is fine because I already have an extra. And there we go. That's how tall we want the door, and it has the exact same height from the bottom as the other door in the front. So then, all we need to do for this one is just cut out the circle. That easy. And those are going to be the two doors. So now we can get to making the glass. So here is where the glass is going to be on this door. It basically tells us where this blue area is what we're looking for. Oh, and I just moved it. Undo. Remember, don't try to move it back manually, or otherwise you'll probably mess up the positioning, and you don't want to do that. I can probably move this red over, but I'm not going to do that. I think it's good where it is. Sometimes with these templates, Roblox it will be very hard to line up the pixels, so you just have to kind of estimate it based on what you're looking for. Alright. So now, we have our cutouts, we have our door. I'm not worried about the striping yet, I can do that later. And then we have this window that we need. So I can duplicate this. And I'm actually going to keep that wedge because I don't have to make another one later. Now I'm going to size this block to the size of the window. And then this is going to go all the way over here. I'm going to look at the measurements so that I can see if they are even. I like that 3.4, that seems good. And then this one is going to be 3.05, or I can do 3.1. I think I'm going to go that looks fine. So sometimes you can really put the part to the size that you want to do. And this is what I was talking about before. If we put a solid black glass block here, you can actually see it stick off the side, and that will be going through our windshield, which we don't want. So we want to make this part wider than the door, so that way we can cut it out without getting any lines. Then I'm going to take this wedge, and I'm going to size it to where it needs to be. Now, on this truck, it looks like that the glass and the door are the same angle, so we got really lucky here, because a lot of other cabs, you'll see that you might run into the issue where they don't line up. So all I have to do is just move it over, and then I can take this, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it wider. So that way I can cut the wedge out from this part, so I have the angle, and then take this part and then cut it out from the door. This is where it kind of gets confusing, but once you figure it out how it's going to go, then it becomes a lot easier. So now we have this part. Now, before I move on, I want to make a copy of this. So here's what I'm going to do, is I'm going to take this, and I'm going to duplicate it. Then I'm going to take this black part and then size it to the center of the door. You'll see why in a second. So now I've unioned this. This is going to be my cutout block for the door. And there it is. Now you see that I have this black part and then this one. Now if I do the same thing, not only do we have the cutout for the window, but we also have the window itself. And I'm going to take this and I'm going to move it one movement in, so 0.05 studs in. So this is going to be where the window is. And there will also be a lot of interior parts that we're going to have to figure out later, but I'm not worried about that right now. But this is the overall door for the front. And then we're going to have to add the stripes and the texture and the glass. And then I also will add the hinges and make it actually be able to open and close. I'll show you how to do that a little later. So right now the black part is through the texture. I'm not worried about that, it's okay. But I just want this door to be right on top of the texture so I can see where it goes. And now we have this one with the cutout. We're going to do the exact same thing. So actually, yeah, I'm going to take this off, and then I'm going to duplicate it and separate it. So now we have it separated, and we have a part. I'm going to click the corner that was cut out because it's not there anymore. So, oh, I actually didn't duplicate it. Duplicate it here, and then we're going to click on the corner because there's no corner on this part, so we don't have to worry about clicking that part, that union. Now, we should have the same dimensions on both sides, but we may not. We'll see how this goes. Yeah, we don't. So then we're going to move this over more, and then this. Now, I can make two parts and then take it out and negate it from this door here, but I can also use one, take out this center, this white part, and then use that on the door. And that's what I'm going to do. I want to try and use as few parts as possible to make something that looks really detailed. So that's why I really like to use unions. So that's going to be there, and then we can move it over to here. And this is what we're going to be cutting out. But before I do that, I'm going to line up this white block here. And there is where the little cross beam is going to be. So now that we have this in place, what I'm going to do is I'm going to size it over, because remember that we want this to be bigger than the size of this part. So I'm going to hit Control on this side and this side. So that way we can get a nice clean cut in the middle of this window. Negate it and union. And there it is. There is the block that we want to use as our window. So then I can take this, negate it, and then take it out of the window. There we go. Now I can use one part for this whole thing up here. I can use one part for the whole glass, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. So I'm here, and boom, there's our glass. And we're going to work on the transparency and the texture, material. We're going to do that later. Right now you just worry about the overall design and getting everything set up. Okay, so now these should be here. So now these are both in the same spot, or in the same axis, basically, and they're both laying against this template. So we want to start to fill in some of these areas here. And that's what we're going to do in the next episode. This is just the overall design of the doors, working with unions and negating the parts. So in the next episode of this tutorial, we're going to be working on filling in these little white spaces here and here, and then we're going to get towards the front. The front's going to be very difficult, so that's why I'm going to save that for last. Alright, thank you for watching, and stay tuned for the next video.